The consequences of drinking and driving create a social problem that concerns and touches each and every one of us. It's very important to realize that as a society, we must remedy a situation that affects thousands of people both physically and mentally. In fact, the presence of impaired drivers on the roads is responsible for the death of thousands of people and constitutes one of the highest causes of mortality. Every year in Canada, drinking and driving is the cause of 2,000 individual deaths and 50,000 injuries. This also adds up to $1 billion that we have to share annually as taxpayers. Every week in the Maritime Provinces, drunken drivers kill 3 people and injure 46, with a total cost of $1.3 million. It's calculated that an average of 3% of the drivers on roads are impaired, which may seem to be a small number. However, these individuals are responsible for 50% of the deaths on our highways. We must realize that these collisions were not accidental. They were the direct result of people choosing to drink and drive. Drinking and driving is a problem that spares no one in our society, and one that can have grave consequences, or at the very least, cause considerable inconveniences. Think of the embarrassment of having been stopped, the amount of money paid out for a fine, the lawyer's fees, and most of all, the loss of your driver's privileges. That can bring about all kinds of problems. How will you get to work if your driver's license has been confiscated? How will you do your errands or drive your children? Maybe you've been lucky in not having caused any loss of human life, even though you were impaired at the wheel. But think how much the loss of life would weigh on your conscience, especially when that loss could have been avoided by choosing not to drink and drive. How many among you can testify to never having driven your car in a state of inebriation and consequently of the risks involved? If the majority of people have done this without being aware of the possible consequences, this can explain why, on average, 3% of drivers on the road are driving under the influence of alcohol. It could be your neighbor, your co-worker, someone in your family, or even your own children, and these people may not even realize that they're committing a criminal act. How many people have told you coming out of a bar after a pleasant evening between friends that they felt good enough to drive home safely, while you knew that they were putting their life and other people's lives in danger? Maybe this has also happened to you. By Canadian law, when the level of alcohol detected in the blood is over 0.08%, that's 8 parts alcohol to 1,000 parts blood, a driver loses his license. In some cases, certain people with an alcohol level as low as 0.04 can lose control over certain abilities. However, if the state accepts 0.08% as the legal limit, it's because the majority of people have impaired driving skills and judgment with this amount of alcohol in their system. The higher the level of alcohol in the blood, the more faculties diminish, including the ability to evaluate situations. This is the reason why the more a driver drinks, the more risks he will take, since he's unable to evaluate the effect on his own physical state. However, getting arrested can have consequences that will have repercussions over your whole life. In addition to having your driver's license taken away, a fine to pay, you could also be imprisoned. Moreover, like anyone who commits a criminal offense, you will have a police record. Other repercussions could affect your life on a financial level or in the workplace. It may even be complicated for you to obtain a visa or a passport with the existence of a police record. If you feel these sanctions are harsh, think about the consequences resulting from drinking and driving on the victims of a collision and on their families. This is why it's important to inform the population and each one of us of this situation. In order to change our habits, we must understand how the body absorbs alcohol and its various effects on the organism, and especially in learning how to control and limit alcohol consumption before the situation becomes critical. Of course, alcoholic beverage will not have the same effect on each individual, since the absorption and the elimination of alcohol is not the same depending on the weight and the percentage of fat in a person. This is because alcohol is absorbed by organic tissues, where we find the blood vessels, since alcohol is insoluble in fat. Generally, the more you weigh, the more tissue you have to absorb alcohol. The volume of tissue and blood is therefore higher. Consequently, more alcohol will be needed to get to a 0.08%. This is the reason why women have to use different standards. What we must understand is that in general, the speed of absorption is superior to the speed of elimination, and this is what causes the state of inebriation. The liver eliminates 90% of alcohol, and the remaining 10% is divided between sweat, urine, and breath. On the average, the rate of alcohol elimination is 0.015 per hour. When we know that the majority of individuals reach the legal limit after 2 or 3 drinks, we can understand that we must measure our intake if we eventually have to drive in the following hours. Let's look at the following situation. An individual has had 4 drinks between 5 and 7 o'clock at night. His alcohol level has now reached 1.0, since every hour he has eliminated 0.015%. He will have to wait until 9 o'clock, that's 2 hours without drinking, before he's able to drive according to the law. All the alcohol in his blood will only be eliminated after 9 hours. That's to say, sometime the next morning. But there is more. The capacity for evaluating your state diminishes proportionally with the increase of alcohol consumption. The more an individual drinks, the less he can adequately realize in what state he's in and the quantity of alcohol he has absorbed. The consumption of drugs mixed with alcohol also increases the effects of alcohol in the body. We must also realize that alcohol doesn't always produce the same effect depending on the physical and mental state of the individual. For instance, fatigue can amplify the effects of alcohol. Other factors such as stress, tension, family problems, or work problems can not only incite someone to drink more, but can also influence the effect alcohol will have on the system. It is also well known that drinking on an empty stomach will allow a more rapid absorption of alcohol and provoke a more rapid state of inebriation than if food had been ingested beforehand. However, it is wrong to think that eating after having consumed alcohol will decrease the effects, nor will drinking coffee or tea sober you any faster. Only time can lower the degree of impairment. There are multiple physical effects of alcohol. First of all, contrary to popular belief, alcohol is a depressant, and this is the reason why so many drivers fall asleep at the wheel. But there are other effects just as bad for someone who drives a motor vehicle. The reflexes are less rapid. For example, the time it takes you to brake, and it becomes harder to coordinate your movements and to execute 2 maneuvers at the same time. For example, keeping your car on the road while checking the rearview mirror. As your vision is reduced, especially when it's dark, reaction time will be slower if we suddenly notice another vehicle appearing in front of us. Finally, the required concentration for driving a car or another vehicle diminishes with the increase of alcohol level in the blood. We can now understand why so many crashes happen. This drunken driver probably adopted one of the following 4 hazardous thinking patterns. I can handle it. Nobody can tell me what to do. It won't happen to me. What will be, will be. Fortunately, it is possible to exercise control and to change your behavior by recognizing the warning signals that indicate that one should stop alcohol consumption. When people around you mention it, when ordinary movements become difficult, when you have a hard time following a conversation, when you can no longer keep track of the number of drinks you've had. There are ways and solutions in helping you maintain a certain control over the situation. Having a meal before going out to drink, since a full stomach will slow down the absorption of alcohol. Alternate an alcoholic beverage with a non-alcoholic one. One can also drink at a slower pace, giving the body time to eliminate alcohol. It's also recommended to designate a driver early in the evening who can drive you home, or take a taxi if you feel your alcohol level to be higher than the legal limit. Or again, you can ask your host to spend the night if you're with friends. It is also possible to change drinking habits by remembering the advantages of consuming less alcohol, the money saved, the fact of not endangering other people's lives, and who knows, maybe serving as an example to those around you. In approaching the problem in this manner, we can use self-management techniques to change one's habits and to help oneself. In order to do this, we sometimes have to accept some change in our environment, which will minimize the temptation and break the chain of habit. There are small things that can help. For example, keeping track of the number of drinks, being capable of knowing one's limit, asking help from your entourage, bringing only a fixed amount of money when going out, and better yet, learning to say no to another drink. And why not plan sporting or social activities that don't encourage overconsumption of alcohol, as when one is in a bar, for example? You have the ability to change your behavior and to positively influence your friends in order to make your community a safer place for your family and friends. Please help break the vicious circle of death.